Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking field service trends and the technology from Microsoft and partners that's opening up interesting new scenarios. My guests are Max Dinzer and Mike Hammonds from HSO. HSO is the sponsor of this episode. Max and Mike tell me about some of their recent experiences helping varied clientele with field service scenarios, and, as you'll hear, they call upon a vast range of technologies, some of which are just emerging as realistic options for many firms, especially those that don't have specialized IT or data science expertise. We discuss Microsoft's progress on Dynamics 365 Field Service, Power BI use cases, the role of add-on solutions for specialized or advanced needs, and some of the tech that most excites Mike and Max today. All right, I'm here with Max Dinzer and Mike Hammonds. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, can we maybe start with some introductions? Mike, why don't I ask you to go first?
Sure. I'm Mike Hammonds. I'm an enterprise architect here at HSO. Been with the firm for around 7 years, but in the industry for approaching 20 now, and have a deep focus around both the field service and overall Dynamics platforms, but an additional focus around data and analytics related to that.
Great. Welcome. And hi, Max.
Hey, Jason. Thank you very much for having us. First, my name is Max Dinzer, pre-sales consultant, or sometimes I jokingly even say Chief Entertainment Officer of our product department, HSO Innovation. HSO Innovation is responsible for building all of the IP that we develop alongside the Dynamics 365, the Microsoft ecosystems, and they are mainly focused on the service industry and everything that has to do with assets. So, yeah, you can think of enterprise asset management, but also maintaining your own assets, maintaining the assets of customers. So the world of field service and where the two worlds come together. Rental companies, because you got to maintain your own fleet, and service equipment on site.
All right, excellent. Max, I'm going to ask you to maybe just expand a little more on that, because I thought to set the stage for this conversation, it would be good to maybe for our listeners to hear from you both, really, what sort of the high-level trends are, the trends that you're paying most attention to today. Max, you started to get into some of those maybe key capabilities and ways that people are approaching field service today. Can you add to that?
Sure. Personally, I would say I'm the biggest IoT, Internet of Things enthusiast within the company, but that's also what I see in the market coming up quite a lot. We've won a lot of deals also with the connected field service capabilities the Microsoft platform offered recently, because things are getting more and more connected, especially you also want to remote control them. We just came out or are still in a pandemic. So remote access and being able to remotely monitor assets is a big thing customers have been looking at. But also, therefore, the communication ways of being able to remotely communicate with fellow employees, maybe with the customer. Think of things like virtual reality, remote assistance of technicians are things that I kind of often see. But these are really trends that you see. What I also typically see is that it's a lot on business consultancy as well. A lot of service businesses, and I would even say 60 or 70% are still really in a reactive service-driven state. So companies want to climb the ladder basically from a preventive towards predictive and maybe towards even proactive service approach, where they can actually tell their customer that there is an issue with the equipment and proactively approach them and offer their services. That's also a little bit the concept of servitization, and I think the main topic we also want to talk about today.
So certainly I'd echo where we see a lot of excitement is certainly around that, what's commonly called augmented reality or virtual reality. It really enhances the ability to either help customers do self-service by being able to see, for example, on a phone, the picture of a device that may be having problems, and a technician remotely or virtually being able to guide that person by circling little items on a screen or, helping them replace a part or resolve that particular issue. So now that, phones are really ubiquitous everywhere, smartphones and tablets really help drive that capability. And we see that it's not only, just an excitement area, but a huge area for improving first call resolution, right? Reducing costs, increasing customer satisfaction because the issues are resolved faster and easier. So that's really where we're starting to see, huge interest in from a customer perspective and industry perspective.
Yeah, I guess it shouldn't be a huge surprise at this point in time where the market is at that most firms have seen some of this technology, some of the things that Max, you talked about really enjoying to play with and to show off. They've seen it, they've heard about it. Obviously, vendors are very excited about it. But it seems to me like it's not trivial anyway to get started with putting yourself on a path to adopting some of these concepts and the capabilities and the technology that it requires to make it a reality.
I think because of the power of the devices and the affordability even of these devices, being able to implement these kind of technologies that are, very software intensive is making this a reality. And so I think that, as this kind of continues, even with people now starting to move more into the headsets, right? And those headsets are becoming smaller, they're becoming less costly, easier to deploy and to manage. We really see this as an area that's going to really continue to add a huge amount of value to both the firms that deploy, from a field service perspective, as well as the end user customer.
And to add to that, I always tell or consult my customers, start small. It doesn't have to be that really expensive virtual reality world where you track all of your devices. It is also a step-by-step approach. And it's like with everything in life, you grow as you basically go. And if you think about the world of virtual reality, where we also see a trend is not only on being able to have that information by hand or assisting someone in repairing it or having the analytics. It can also be a concept of training people. That's where we, for example, see a lot of value. A lot of millennials now get into the markets. They are used to modern technologies. They learn differently than you used to do before. And the thing with that is that virtual reality can be fun for a learning experience. Microsoft, for example, offers guides as functionality where you have a step-to-step guide where you can, for example, explain how to repair a certain device or a certain kind of asset, how to maintain a power generator or whatever it basically is that you maintain. And that can already bring a lot of value. And setting up these guides is with ease. Guides comes at a kind of cheap license price as well. And it doesn't mean that you have to invest into 5,000 HoloLenses to have all of your complete technician team running on that. It means having one or two of them for training purposes and getting your new hires up to speed more quickly as well. And yeah, you also see that a lot of employee shortage is a big issue in the field service industries. Experts are being more and more demanded, as well as the people with 20 or 30 years of business knowledge. They go into retirement, and for them, putting that into a transformation space is sometimes a little bit difficult. But together with the young people and the experienced people can set up these guides and give a good training experience. And that doesn't need a large investment or something. So maybe start small with things like that and then grow yourself into that technology.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little more about how to grow into that technology and specifically referencing the growth model that you had brought to me as we were getting ready to do this recording. I think it's a really interesting model that you've adopted at HSO and that's out there now for people to see. I think we'll put a link to some more information about it, but it's a service business growth model that fits a lot of what you were just talking about, Max, right? Mike, do you want to maybe introduce that a little bit more about how you are looking at that adoption and how businesses can grow into more service-oriented work?
Certainly. It really does boil down to a lot of what Max was just referring to. The software technologies themselves are a lot more affordable than they were many years ago because the devices are more powerful. It's, you can deploy more capability. So instead of going out and buying, $5,000 or $10,000 devices as a headset, you can now literally just use an iPhone or an Android phone to do those capabilities. And so by kind of taking that, small bite approach, right? Let's, instead of trying to do everything at once and really jump into, say, the more complex areas of IoT, Internet of Things and capturing real-time data, by taking off this slice and starting with something that's a little bit easier to implement and doesn't rely necessarily on the equipment being tied to the internet. Because while that certainly is a trend, there's still a lot of old equipment out there that doesn't have that capability. And so, taking something that we can very quickly and easily deploy really provides a lot of value to these organizations, gets the user base excited because they've got a new technology that they see can really help them help their customers. And that's really the essence of being able to kind of take this small bite approach, if you will, and slowly start to adopt these new technologies. And then as you start to mature in using them, right now you can start to take on another capability, like maybe looking into IoT, because there's now even, very small devices about the size of a quarter or a pack of gum that can measure things like vibration, humidity, temperature, revolutions per minute on a motor, things along those lines that can start to move into more of the predictive and proactive type capabilities that are the overall trend.
Yeah, and that's what you typically also see pictured in that growth model that you were mentioning, which we did with a partner company of ours, Noventum, together. They are experts in service consultancy, and they also said what we had within that research of that business growth model, that actually 60 or 70% are really at a reactive state still. And that's what I mean with don't force yourself to be already on the top notch. It's a growth path that many companies are on. Be a little bit realistic. Start with things like improving your preventive maintenance contracts, maybe offering a little bit more services around that, offering also full service contracts to your customers, and start picking these small bites up and try to implement them into your service portfolio. And therefore, that growth model targets basically that you grow from a reactive over a preventive towards a predictive and then towards a proactive service provider, going away from only product related services, but actually focusing on what does your customer needs and becoming a long-term partner of them.
When I think about some of the cool technology options that are out there that you were both mentioning and how the industry is moving forward, Max, I think to your point, it's easy to forget that for every time you maybe add sensors that can be tracked from remotely, or that you start adding preventative maintenance, like you said, that has impacts on both employees, workers. It also has an impact on what the customers are expecting and experiencing from you as an organization. So, I mean, these are big deal changes, even if they're incremental, I would think. Everyone else, the entire customer to employee to back office, from deskless workers and back office workers, all have to be brought along with you, right, to make it work.
Correct. And that's why a lot of change management is usually involved in these projects that we do as well. Sometimes it can be a hard process and not everyone wants to adapt as well. But I like the remark that Michael actually did. You also have a lot of old devices and you're never going to update all of these suddenly to be smart and artificial. What I always say, it doesn't have to be a complete change or a complete transformation because you still want to maintain your old devices, but grow into being able to do both and adapt technologies and getting used to them.
Well, can we dive into maybe a few of the more specifics of around mapping sort of some of the capabilities that come from Microsoft directly? And I know there's a whole world of technology out there that supports some of the initiatives that we've already touched on. I think it would be nice to sort of survey some of those as it relates to field service and maybe connected field service specifically. I don't know, is there a particular area that you would want to start in terms of what Microsoft is offering that is supporting some of these capabilities? I know we've touched on guides. Do you want to maybe touch on field service itself, the D365 Field Service application?
Yeah, one of the big areas of investment for a while now, and we're really seeing it pay off, is around resource optimization. And that not only means, scheduling resources optimally, but also even helping people get to the location of their work orders in the most efficient way, right? In an optimal way. So Microsoft's spent a lot of money and effort in developing artificial intelligence and machine learning models that can automatically schedule your work for you, right? So for example, if I've got, 50 technicians and I need to make sure that I'm getting the most impact out of where those people need to be, software is actually now able to take in many different variables, right? Equipment, miles per gallon, traffic, what the type of incident is, what are the skills of those workers, and then being able to automatically schedule a work order if it's a break fix item, or automatically generate preventive maintenance tickets when it's due, say from a contractual perspective, to actually have that show up on a worker schedule without any real human intervention. Plus, you can also obviously still have some human override because we would still want some of that control. But it's really impactful to see just the amount of savings that can come from something as what sounds as simple as scheduling optimization, but really has a lot of complexity to it when you throw in all those variables. And being able to do that where you actually see impact is pretty satisfying from a consulting experience like HSO.
Is that really the heart of a lot of the solutions that you think of is sort of centered around that field service and that optimization engine that can then bring a lot of other things in?
Yeah, if you look at the Microsoft platform itself, like you said, we have a large product portfolio. If we look at Dynamics 365, which is the business application space of Microsoft, then you, of course, have Field Service, which is the field service application of Microsoft. You have Customer Service, which is more like ticket and case management, so all of the handling that you basically have in the back office. But you also have the ERP applications where you, for example, have Enterprise Asset Management. If you then look at what Microsoft delivers, you have a stable base and you have all of these great technologies that sit on top of Azure, Microsoft Cloud infrastructure. And then you have ISVs like us, HSO Innovation, and vendors like HSO that basically develop these capabilities further. So we've extended, for example, the standard field service capability with a tool that's called Dynamics Advanced Field Service and enriched it with the 20 years of service industry knowledge that we have. And yeah, most of that from a Microsoft perspective is focused on that area. But sometimes we also see that field service is, especially with customers that have an SAP back and a good capability, while we also see that our ISV product, which we have on the ERP side, is kind of an interesting thing. So you have many ways how you could position service, and there are different ways of services that do customers as well. Right? You have the traditional field service kind of companies, but you also have companies that do in-house repair and depot repair jobs, which has a different kind of character.
What about the planning side? When you're planning and scheduling, I know that that's an area that your team has also looked at or helps clients with. Can we talk a little bit more about what goes into service planning?
So certainly that's kind of starting to go into one of my prime areas of focus, which is around data and being able to analyze the data that you have and make actionable, intelligent decisions from that. And so you see as part of these trends, a marrying of more advanced analytics capabilities to be able to do, either prediction, right? And predicting when things might fail or predicting when a service technician might need to be deployed. But it's also putting in those little nuggets of information that really help drive, the reduction of costs and the increase of satisfaction, because you're able to take advantage of that data and use it intelligently to make smarter business decisions. So a lot of what we've done around our products that we provide from an HSO innovation perspective is also around those analytical tools, right? And what's really nice about this is the capabilities are advancing to a point where just a couple of years ago, you would need, data scientists, people that are really deeply ensconced and nuanced in data and data analytics. But the tools have become so much smarter that, you can now take folks that don't have those deep skills, but still be able to utilize that technology because it's becoming, a lot more user friendly and doesn't necessarily require somebody who has those kind of deep skills, but you're still getting that output of what those skills provide because Microsoft's kind of bundling them into the Azure services that make those things possible.
Can only agree to that. We have a few customers that already start building dashboards themselves. Of course, if you want to do deep down analysis and that skip hole scenario that I was mentioning, then I still recommend the data scientist. But for reporting on things like a first time fix percentage or mean time between failure, with the newest technology, a service leader could do that. We see the low code, no code approach developing even more further, and allowing business users and key users to create their own dashboards and reporting with ease.
Yeah, excellent. That was what I was about to ask too, was where some of those things are really coming to the fore, where it's not a data scientist building it. Max, you touched on Power Platform there. What are some of the typical mechanisms or uses of Power Platform services to reinforce or to complete these kinds of solutions?
Power BI that was just mentioned from a reporting perspective. I always say data is the gold of the current century. But if you execute so many services a day or perform so many transactions per day, you need to treat the data and you need to visualize to get the information out of it. No one can get insights into 10,000 work orders if you haven't visualized them in a nice graph and have the understanding and track it on a KPI perspective. But what we also see is one of the biggest driver of service growth is actually backend automation. There, Power Automate comes into place and automizes a lot of things and also improves the customer satisfaction. Simple things like knowing when my technician will be arriving at my place via a push notification that is sent to my WhatsApp or direct message that can be triggered off from a work order creation. But also a lot of benefits over customer satisfaction, where survey is going to be sent about the technician performance at the end after the work order is being closed. Automatic emailing, maybe closing and changing statuses automatically based on the entry that the technician does on his tablet. Things like that really improve the business. And what we also see is that portals become more and more important. If a customer is able in the depot repair business to request an RMA from a portal, it already saves you a lot of communication and also gives back a lot of time for the back office employees so they can focus on the things they really have to do.
I wanted to turn back a little bit to something that we touched on right near the beginning. I think it was you, Max. You mentioned the term servitization. It's been around for a while, but it's always one that's a little curious to me in terms of, what some of the sort of the concrete applications are, or maybe examples of where that concept is going. Can we talk a little bit about it and maybe some of the specific Microsoft technologies that are playing a part today?
So if you look there at the Dynamics 365 Field Service application, that's, for example, one of the areas where we especially enriched it with our ISV tool, Dynamics Advanced Field Service, is the area of agreements. If you talk about servitization, you actually want to offer your customer all of the services and you want to bind them on a long-term perspective. That is, in essence, what you want to do in that trend. Transform your business more into a Netflix subscription kind of model. So your customers basically buy a full service subscription for you, pay a monthly fee or something like that, and then their full service is being covered and you can offer everything around that. And where we, for example, one of our customers see that becoming in value is actually if you have these data analytics by hand on your contract. The contract covers all of the capabilities, allows you to define what's billable and not billable. And if you have the data and AI coming in, you can actually really track, am I making revenue on that, or how am I basically performing, as well as giving the customer the insights into the assets they actually own. And therefore, a lot of customers are ready to pay if I understand what's the condition of my asset and have it well maintained and nearly a downtime to 0% of course, you're never going to reach the full 100%. It's always going to be around the 99. But if you can guarantee that in some kind of way, then customers are able to pay for that and are also willing to pay for that. One of the customers that we have is, for example, Grünbeck, and Grünbeck creates water filters. And they actually had the issue that they before never knew their end customer because they were selling these water filters via retail, via wholesale, via dealers. And then the device was sold. So they didn't know who's actually the end user of that water filter. So what we did for Grünbeck is connect their field service instance with an IoT central application where customers have a mobile application and they can actually see how their water filtration is going on. And also have, by the way, the capability of ordering more salt, which they need for the water filtration, right from Grünbeck, as well as they subscribe to the application for €5 per month. And they can ask for services in there, request a technician visit, get all of the insights. And for Grünbeck, the benefit was, okay, now I know who's my end customer. Now I can offer all of the materials, spare parts like salt, consumables alongside that. And I have a direct one-to-one service communication while still being able to sell via wholesale and distribution. And that's really the beauty and has actually increased the service revenue significantly.
And I would add to that, it also touches on that idea of data and measuring data and key performance indicators, right? It's now aligning the capability of the application. Some of those we've already talked about, right? Field service, advanced field service. Max mentioned earlier customer service, where you get into more of that customer service agent trying to help someone just via phone remotely, things along those lines. But you really need to identify those correct KPIs, those key performance indicators, to make sure that you're delivering and that you can deliver. So as an example, there's a big trend towards service level agreements, right? And being able to provide the right level of service as quickly as possible during the right hours that the customer needs. Well, if you don't do the proper analysis and are focused on the right KPI, you may be trying to deliver a service level that organizationally you just can't deliver. And so you out of the gate, you're already kind of starting to impact negatively the customer experience because you've kind of overpromised, right? And you've underdelivered. By within each of those areas, developing the right KPI along with using the right tool for the job becomes really important.
All right. There's one more just sort of technology area that I wanted to get your input on. Digital twins. It's one of those concepts that I feel has really expanded sort of maybe beyond where some of the traditional meaning was. But I think in service scenarios, I can at least conceptualize how it could be useful. Does one of you want to take a turn at kind of providing your view of what digital twins are doing in service management?
Sure. Microsoft, especially last week, just released a new virtual reality tool where you can actually see, for example, a complete facility, virtualize and basically create the digital twin in there. So it's visual on your laptop. You can see it. You can get all of the analytics out of it. What we are basically creating there, to be honest, if I thought myself back then, metaverse, I was laughing about it in the beginning a little bit, but in the meantime, technology has changed my thinking about it, because more and more our real world is going into the digital world as well. Now we are always connected with our phones, and I actually don't believe that the metaverse is going to be some NFTs or something, but the metaverse is going to be the parallel world that is going to live next to our real world, where we have all of these AI insights and the BI capabilities that give us information up hand. And especially in the service industry, maintaining a large facility or maintaining a large production floor and maybe servicing a complete fleet of a customer and being able to then have that digital twin by hand and without having to open up the motor or going into the engine and into the details, already having information about the current state, without having to check the oil level, without having to check how much fuel is in there, you already can get that information back. And I think that's where the future lies, where you really have the information up front without having to actually open up things and change them, just getting them out of them by technology.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot to be seen there. I'm personally just keeping my eyes open for interesting use cases for it. I think there's more to be seen, but it certainly seems like still kind of early days for making some of those concepts reality, and at least in the broad economy, as opposed to, I think, maybe some bigger firms that have really made early investments in it.
Yeah, I agree on that. It is really in early stages, but I believe it has a high future potential and where the world will be going to. But especially for facility management and these production floors, I already see a lot of value. Think about these machines that are sometimes in these production areas. They can be worth millions. So if one of these breaks down, then it's actually a high damage towards the company. And investing, for example, 50K into a digital twin and the AI and artificial things that sit behind it already returns the investment if you prevent one breakdown. That's simple math that you could basically think about. Offers a lot of great capabilities. And if you think about fleet management, then I also believe that it has a lot of value, because if your whole fleet can replicate a digital twin and via one button you can send, for example, a software update, you actually save the time to send 20,000 technicians over there. And that can cost, think of the travel costs for 20,000 technicians to visit some kind of place. If you just think of $100 for a hotel times 20,000. That's already a 200K cost investment. And nowadays with digital twins, it can actually just cost you one click and the software update is going to be published across the whole fleet. So think of the cost savings that it can bring. And then the mathematics behind that is kind of easy.
Yeah, and I would add what I see is exciting around digital twins is you're able to capture data from real world instruments and real world environments, and you're now essentially duplicating that, right, in a virtual twin of it. But now that you've got real world data, right, now you can do simulations and projections to really see what are the impacts of, either extending a maintenance schedule or perhaps reducing a maintenance schedule, right? You can now begin to see how can I optimize that equipment because I've now got this virtual copy of it, right, that works and acts just like the real world version, but now I can kind of, give it different inputs and tweak little environment variables to really see what the impact of that is. And to me, overall, now you're going to be able to provide that idea of better, more improved service, proactive service, and you're getting into that predictive end of the spectrum.
I guess another element of this that we should at least talk about a little bit is what the role of IT is in some of these decisions versus the business. One of the great things about this conversation is how sort of the products and the sort of the business vision for investing in them is really they do go hand in hand with some of the business trends and the capabilities that will support making those reality. The business has to bring IT along with them, or perhaps you can tell me it's the other way around. But what is your view on that? Mike, do you want to take a stab at that one?
Sure. And we do see that impact vary by organization. So we've got some organizations that their IT shops are very focused on, their end customer and what it is they can do from a technology perspective to help that end user do their job. So in those organizations, we find that those conversations do begin on the technology side of things simply because the business has requested of IT, hey, we have this need or we have this problem, can you help us solve it? And so then the IT will reach out to companies like Microsoft, like HSO, and begin to collaborate and communicate around, what's the possibilities. But there are other organizations, that aren't as strong in that area. Either they just, they're more focused on product and product service and not necessarily on adoption of new technologies. And so that's where we've come up with a lot of processes around change management, around user adoption, around communication that really helps those organizations truly adopt these new technologies and make sure that they're successful throughout the organization. So, while you might think initially as field services kind of a particular problem around break fix or around preventive maintenance, it touches so many other areas. For example, data warehousing, right? Do I have the right parts available to fix the equipment out in the field? Do I have it in the right location? Do I foresee a trend where I need more equipment coming down the line because a customer is growing rapidly and wants to or needs to buy new equipment? So you have to bring in these other areas, these other parts of the business that get the bigger picture of, while I'm trying to solve a problem around field service, it has an impact across the organization because of all those, interacting departments that, all need to kind of play together and understand what their role is in adopting that new technology. Thankfully, when you are talking about some of these newer capabilities around the virtualization in particular, because that's a pretty easy one to bite off, in small chunks and see a lot of real value, that helps either the IT or the business owner, whoever's really trying to drive the end result of fixing whatever that problem is, it really truly helps them take advantage of that and make sure that the entire organization is really on board with it.
Yeah, I can fully agree with Michael there. That's what we also typically see. Our most successful implementations is where the business is also involved. So it shouldn't only be an IT and technology topic. That's why we also work so much together with Noventum, especially in Europe, to combine business consultancy with IT consultancy. Of course, we have a lot of experts out of the field. A lot of our employees come from the field service industry. So we really try to focus on the best practices and implement that there as well. But the business has to buy in and tell them about these nitty-gritty details that they face in their day-to-day business. Maybe technology can help them solve that around, find a fast and efficient way for them.
I wanted to turn to the future before we wrap up here. When you look at the future roadmap for Microsoft, or perhaps even within HSO or your partners, what are you excited about next? Max, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so the digital twin thing is actually something that really excites me, and the capabilities that are coming from a connected field service and Azure IoT kind of area. If you look at our roadmap from our own ISV, then we really want to focus also on the subcontractor capabilities. We see more and more services are also outsourced, and getting these capabilities and enabling also subcontractor resources to make use of these great capabilities, getting them onto the Microsoft platform as well, is, I think, an important factor as well.
Yeah, and a couple of things that I'm excited about. Microsoft's really taking a focus around the usability aspect, right? Which is one of the greatest challenges to adoption is this technology easy enough to use that I can actually use it, right? Without having to spend weeks and weeks in training in order to do that. But, is it something that, is useful to me as well? And so the next upcoming releases for this year in particular are around the usability of capabilities. So usability on the mobile device, there's a lot of new capabilities coming out here. We recently demonstrated to a customer some virtual reality around taking measurements, right? So they go out into the field and they'll measure the location of where a piece of equipment's going to be. That feeds into the field service application, but also then allows them to put 3D images of their equipment in place. So he can hold up the phone where that location is, and they can actually kind of drag and drop the piece of equipment into the field of view. So, as long as that's easy to use, right, then users find a lot of value there. Not only does the end user, but more importantly, the customer does, because now they can more easily visualize, either where that equipment where that piece of equipment's going to go, or what is the flow of the factory. When we talked earlier about the warehouse and where the location of the parts and equipment are. So being able to quickly, easily find that information, either through a phone experience, using your fingers navigation, and even, another hot topic around that is voice entry, right? And just being able to ask your knowledge base a question and have it return results that can help you resolve issues. So those are some enhancements that are coming in this year in particular that I think people are going to find really exciting.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate both of you taking the time. It's always fun to catch up on field service trends and hear from you what you've been working on and what your clients have been investing in. And I think this growth model, it really helped to sort of clarify some of the ways in which these things are changing and evolving. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having us, Jason. That has been fun.
This has been another episode of the MSCW podcast. My thanks once again to Mike Hammond and Max Dinzer for joining. And to read the report we mentioned, check out the link in the show notes. For more resources and information on Connected Field Service and a Connected Field Service workshop from HSO, please visit us.hso.com/connected-field-service. That's us.hso.com/connected-field-service. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. And for all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.